Hello everyone, and welcome to a new video. I thought I would respond to some comments. I haven't done a dedicated comment response video in a while, and I feel like I haven't been, there hasn't really been a format, in a video where I've been addressing them. I know in modeling videos, when those were happening more regularly on the channel, I would address comments more often. Um, and I haven't really been doing it during my gameplay videos, right? I thank everyone for being patient during the modeling break. If you have questions about that, go watch. I made a video explaining why the modeling is on a hiatus for the moment. There's just some technical reasons that we're on a break right now. So feel free to watch that video for context. But now I just wanted to go ahead and kind of respond to some of your comments and just continue to engage with the community here because that's really what I love about this channel. Excuse the voice crack, but it's that like we're a community here, right? It's like I know that this creative project, Wind Waker Unflooded, is a huge part of why people are here. Um, but especially for now, while there are technical reasons that the project is not being worked on right now, but will be soon. Progress will strike up again soon. I promise you. I promise. But at least until then, it's like there's still stuff to talk about. We're still Zelda fans. We can still share our love for this series with each other and share this passion and enthusiasm. And I just want to respond to some of your comments, especially in some of these podcast episodes where we talk about different things about Zelda and some of these gameplay videos, right? Some of the stuff is not necessarily even about Wind Waker Unflooded, my 3D modeling project where I'm reimagining the kingdom of Hyrule as it could have existed within the world of the Wind Waker, for those that don't know. But anyway, I just want to kind of read some of y'all's comments and get into that. Let's start with Luke's Dalit here. This is from a clip from a recent podcast episode featuring Skylink Theory. If y'all haven't seen that, I really recommend that episode. We had a great discussion about Zelda lore and the timeline, and he has some ideas about where the timeline could go in the future. Really interesting episode. But Lux says, I respect and like listening to others' understanding of the timeline and lore. Personally, I still have my headcanon that most of the series is an anthology, with the minor exceptions of Wind Waker to Phantom Hourglass and Ocarina of Time to Majora's Mask. I am with Z-Link on the disconnect of Tears of the Kingdom breaking too much lore with Breath of the Wild to be a proper story sequel. I think that's really interesting. I guess I'm interested to hear more, like, and feel free to like comment in this video about like how does Tears of the Kingdom break lore with Breath of the Wild? Because there's things that it breaks lore, like I think about with other Zelda games, and there's stuff about like and just to be clear, I love Tears of the Kingdom. I love its story. To me, it's not too egregious, but there are questions I have, and there's things where I'm like, okay, if Rauru is the first king of Hyrule, where are the flashbacks on the timeline, right? Like, I think we have no temporal reference for how far back Zelda travels to in the Tears of the Kingdom flashbacks, except that we know it's the first kingdom of Hyrule, which if we take that at face value, places it, between Skyward Sword and Ocarina of Time, right? So I don't know. I guess I'm interested though in like what are the differences between Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, because I wasn't sure that it broke lore. But anyway, maybe Javier Vasquez has something to say. Regarding the notion of a disconnect between the two games in the Wild duology, it has always been my understanding that the 5-year gap between both games, Fubayashi's confirmation regarding the Sheikah technology just disappearing all of a sudden, and Link giving up his house in Hateno to Zelda. Oh, you think Link gave up his house to Zelda? I thought they lived together. I thought that was the implication, right, from Tears of the Kingdom, seeing Zelda's diary in Link's house, and it's like, wait a minute. Link bought this house. I don't think he just gave it up to Zelda. I think they lived together. But anyway, all perfectly addresses why none of the events in Breath of the Wild left a lasting impression to the denizens of Hyrule for there to be any explicit reference to the events of the previous game. Seeing as Link doesn't seem the kind to stay in one place for a long time, I can understand why most of the people in Hyrule wouldn't know who he is, given his unwillingness to say. Yeah, I think there's truth to that. I wish I could remember. I was talking to someone who's, I think it's Captain Bergerson, but feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I was talking to someone on a recent podcast episode who said they were going through Tears of the Kingdom and logging all of the instances in which an NPC either recognized Link or didn't recognize Link, and you thought that they should. And they told me that the way that they had diagrammed it out, and like looking at all the characters who either recognized you or didn't recognize you, it made a little bit more sense than you would expect. So I'm excited to see that video come out. Feel free to, if you're watching this video, I'm sorry, I need to look for it and see if that already got made. But I think that's a really interesting idea, and I remember talking to you on the podcast about it. But feel free to comment down below because I'd love to see that video. Maybe it's just a script still right now, but as far as I know, that's in the works, and I've been told that it makes more sense than you expect. Um, but I do think that there's some truth to there, right? That Link is in Tears of the Kingdom, Link is still a bit of a nomad, right? And that definitely even if he lived with Zelda and Hateno, that he may not have been at his house a lot. There was work to do for both of them. There was work to do. Um, right? So I don't know. I think that's definitely a fair point, for sure. Let's address Yo Mama 5368. Thank you for commenting. This was on a commenting on a gameplay video as I've been playing the Wind Waker on this channel. That's been so helpful just because I haven't done a full playthrough of the Wind Waker in a long time, and I've just realized that like I needed to be up to date and freshen up on the game text and its dialogue and its lore, and just to make sure that like as I make the map of Wind Waker Unflooded and I'm making assumptions about the world of Hyrule as it connects to the world of the Wind Waker, I need to make sure that I'm up to date and that I'm accurate about the assumptions that I'm making. But Yo Mama says, another thing Windfall does is integrate you into this community. You learn all about these people and get involved with their lives, something that happens to some degree in every Zelda game, but is particularly compelling here because the last scene at the end of the story banks so heavily on the idea of this beauty and hope that can exist in the surface. I totally agree, yeah. In the future, these people have made for themselves, even after the flood. So you can buy into the idea that Ganondorf is wrong, that the ocean is more than just fallen leaves on a forgotten pool, in part because you've spent so much time meeting the people who've made such wonderful lives there. I totally agree. I think that's absolutely part of why I fall in love with it, right? And that's something, that I guess, yeah, I don't think I mentioned in the video, because I talked in this video as I was, doing some of these side quests on Windfall that, like, that Windfall Island really is just it just thematically what it does, right? Like you're leaving home and you're finding a new home in a way, and obviously Outset is still home. You don't have a house on Windfall, but there's this community and these relationships that you build as you help different people fulfill their dreams or come to terms with reality or accomplish their goals in different ways. Like you make a meaningful impact on Windfall Island. You listen to people. You lend them your ear. You understand them. You hear them out. I think that's really important, is that you get to be attentive to different people's needs, and that's something that they really value. That may be something that the other islanders aren't doing for them, but when Link's there, he gets to be attentive to them, right? But you see that there's this bustling community, full of life, full of joy, right? That's such a huge theme of Windfall, especially here through the teacher, right? This joy association, who you collect joy pendants for, is that despite everything, despite this dystopian post-apocalyptic world where Hyrule is destroyed, Hyrule is buried, there's no evidence of Hyrule anymore. This huge kingdom that was once so great, it's gone. What's left is nothing from that, basically. And yet there is still joy. So yeah, and I love just comparing that to the themes of the game, right? The Ganondorf is trying so hard to resurrect this kingdom of Hyrule that he thinks is so great, but there is still joy on the surface, and we see that and we interact with that, and like I just love that all of the side quests are still complementary to the themes of the main quest. It's not this separate thing. It's like, oh, here's the story and then here's the side quest, and it's all just kind of like, it's just extra gameplay and mini games, and it doesn't really matter. Like, no, it's all cohesive, and I love that. I love that Wind Waker does that. I totally agree. Yeah, and here's a amazing actor says, this is also in response to my podcast episode, my recent one with Skylink Theory. It said the explanation of the Korok side quest in Wind Waker was to spread the forest around the islands to drain the Great Sea. I'd love to see that endeavor being successful in a return to the original Hyrule. That was in response to the idea that is Breath of the Wild, is that like a merging of all timelines? Because like that's something that's said a lot, and I don't really bat an eye on it at it, but like still like subconsciously in my mind that means, well, really, it's this, maybe it's at the end of the child or downfall timelines, but not the adult timeline. Like that's not something I really like argue a lot, but it is something I think. But then still this idea that like the Great Sea could have been drained and Hyrule could have been, returned to eventually. That is possible, the issue is just like in Spirit Tracks, we know that like they settled a new land and created a new Hyrule, literally calling it New Hyrule. So it's like to me, it's I don't like the idea that they came back to the same continent that they left. Um, I don't terribly mind it if that's ever confirmed and there's like sufficient evidence. But right now, it's like I don't feel a need to say that they came back. Um, I don't know. It's like Hyrule is this history of cycles and these family lineages that continue. And there could be something powerful about like they tried to walk away from it and they still made a Hyrule. And eventually they did come back, and Ganondorf's lineage survived. The Gerudo royal family's lineage survived. The Hyrule royal family continued their traditions. And this bloodline of knights or of random citizens taking, the charge and wielding the Master Sword, like that's still a tradition that continues. Like there could still be power there. As much as they try to walk away from these things, some things are too powerful to leave behind. Fate is something you can't run from. The will of the gods is something you can't run from. There's a story you could tell there about like going in between Spirit Tracks and Breath of the Wild. Um, but until that story's told, until that game is made, and you can make that game, but until that game is made, I'm not really buying into that theory. But it's something I'm open to. It's just something that's like I would want Nintendo to bridge that gap first before I do in my head. But I'm open to it. Um, you can call me insane, but I'm going to wholeheartedly defend the odd break between the first floor with water levels and the rest of the dungeon. The water level is out of your control, when usually, like you said, it's in your power. This water also pours out from three mouths that open the tower proper. This was in response to I was playing the Tower of the Gods here, and yeah, like I said, something about the along the lines of like usually in water dungeons in Zelda, the puzzle is that you're controlling the water level, um, and having to manipulate it in order to like open the right door. And in Tower of the Gods, you don't control it at all. It's just random. You wait it out. It's on a timer. And I was just bringing that up because it's an interesting comparison. I don't mind that either. I totally agree. Um, and this commenter says, I think thematically it's reflective of the flood, what the gods had done, out of our control. The first floor is like the land below, at the whims of the gods. The floors that follow, feature floating platforms and high technology, not unlike what Skyward Sword would represent more literally. This is the realm of the gods, starkly divorced from the first floor. You complete puzzles by waiting on fate and doing manual labor. But above, you command technology and spend quite a bit of time airborne. That's really interesting. I totally dig that metaphor. Is that like as you retreat from the flood, right? You're getting closer to the realm of the gods, which is interesting because in Wind Waker we know that really getting closer to the land of the gods means going lower, going underwater. Though I guess like technically like when the gods departed the world, I think we see them flying upwards into the heavens, but but Hyrule is down below them, and that's the entrance to the sacred realm is in Hyrule. Um, but anyway, yeah, this dungeon doesn't technically lack a central room, but its ascending nature and refusal to return to floors below always made this allegorical progression pattern stronger in my mind. Like you said, it's the first time we get these partners mechanics and the theme of collaboration. Yeah, I definitely think it's like there's this question of like what is the Tower of the Gods representing? What are you actively doing? Because in every other Wind Waker dungeon, you're either actively rescuing someone or helping someone find their purpose. It's character motivated. In every dungeon, Forsaken Fortress, you're rescuing your sister. Dragon Rouge Cavern, you're rescuing Medley. Forbidden Woods, you're rescuing Makar. Earth Temple, you're helping Medley find her purpose. And in the Wind Temple, you're helping Makar find their purpose. And then you go to Ganon's Tower and you're rescuing Zelda. So it's like everything is motivated. And of course, in like the Return to the Forsaken Fortress, in the middle of the game, you're rescuing your sister for real. But it's like everything is motivated by character, except for the Tower of the Gods, which is just, like completing a puzzle so that you can get the Master Sword, so that you can save your sister. It's an important step, but it's like, what are you actively doing? And I think part of that is like they're introducing the idea of partnership mechanics with the robots without like giving you a full character to control yet. So I think it's just dipping your toes in, which I think is fine. And I get that like it's a step to complete later missions that are character focused. So to me, it's just I thought it was interesting because it's the one dungeon that's like, all right, you're not actively saving someone, but it confronts you to, or it forces you to confront the past, and to figure out if you can step into the shoes of the hero of legend, which I think is really interesting. And so yeah, they continue to say, I think in so many ways the gods are teaching that collaboration here, uniting Link's world with theirs and inspiring Link to connect with the rest of his own world with the knowledge of the world beneath. Yeah, I completely agree. I'm glad you didn't. Yeah, yeah. I hear it getting a little disrespected nowadays. Yeah, totally. I totally agree, man. I love the Tower of the Gods. I'm just working through it mentally. But it's something that, yeah, like I think it's a really great dungeon. I really I love what it represents um, in this game, and yeah, like I like the Tower of the Gods. I love all the dungeons of the Wind Waker, and I know that sometimes I think about the dungeons and I'm like, is what made me fall in love with Wind Waker the dungeons? No, I think it's the open world and being able to explore it, and that relationship with underwater Hyrule and the end of the game especially. But like just throughout the game, just having this open world that was mine to explore and doing quests on Windfall Island, I think that's when I fell in love with the game. And the dungeons were just a way of moving me along in the story. But I still love the dungeons. I think they're great. And I think there's things that they do that I want Zelda dungeons in the future to go back to. I totally agree with Nixus Gaming here as well. And they talk about a theory that makes this whole castle sequence more interesting. This is the moments before time was frozen and was likely Hyrule's last stand, or true falling. It would explain the large amount of enemies in the room. It was a force sent to wipe out the royal family for good. But maybe they sealed the Master Sword chamber just in time, hence why a lot of enemies are in search mode. They sealed the chamber, enemies poured in, and in a last ditch, the king flooded Hyrule and put away the Master Sword until a new hero could venture below and obtain it. A bonus add-on theory: why weren't there any soldiers defending the castle in this last stand? You're fighting them. It explains the multiple dark nuts throughout the room. I totally agree, man. I definitely think dark nuts are the transformed like Knights of Hyrule, essentially, right? I totally agree. That's something that I definitely want to like continue to tackle in Wind Waker Unflooded. I've said before that like I'm doing this modeling project where I'm modeling Hyrule as it could have existed within the world of the Wind Waker, and so I'm thinking about a lot of story for it. But I do want to make like cutscene style short films once the map is done, and I'm already starting to work on scripts for that. And thinking about this, like that moment, is definitely like on my mind a lot as I'm working on those scripts. The idea of like, and we see that in game. We see the evidence of it in game of this invasion of Ganon's monsters breaching the walls. Right, we see that happen because when time, is restored, we go and fight them ourselves. Right, which I think is so cool. That idea of like right before the flood, Ganon's invasion, like no hero would come, and yet that same invasion is ultimately stopped by Link in the future. I think that's so cool. But yeah, I mean that's definitely some stuff that I totally agree with, and am thinking about for sure. And I totally agree, especially with the idea of Dark Nuts being those knights. And I really want to get into the story about like showing that transformation, showing what it meant for these Knights of Hyrule to not just be turned to Ganon's will, but I think become monsters. That's my theory. Is I don't think that they were monsters before they were under Ganon's influence. I think they were people, and then were transformed into dogs. Right. I really want to show that transformation. So, yeah. Thank you, Spencer Foot. I don't comment, but I'm glad you're still working on the project. It's working. We're working. I know that like maybe I should be upfront about this, but we're working on like reworking some of the map as well. The collaborators on this project and figuring out like just a couple of new places. And even though there's not modeling progress happening right now for technical reasons, like I said, go to the channel, watch that video where I explain that. Um, but I did like an update video a couple weeks ago. I think I structured it like an apology video. So when you see the black and white video, that thumbnail, and it is an apology. Like I'm sorry that like I know a lot of you subscribed for modeling progress, and I haven't been doing that for a while. But there are technical reasons that it's on a break right now. So feel free to watch that video to get more context. But yeah, like in the meanwhile, there's still like concept art being made and like reworking the map, figuring out new details to add to the map. That's happening right now. So Wind Waker Unflooded is still happening. There's reasons that it's going to take a second before videos come back up. But I'm so excited. There are collaborators still working on it, and I'm really excited to continue to share progress. Hopefully soon. Hopefully soon. Don't listen to Rounded Waffle. I love Swagmasta's handle. Don't change a thing, Swagmasta. I did a podcast episode recently with Swagmasta, and maybe were some of these clips with Swagmaster? No, those were both Skylink clips. Excuse me. But yeah, Swagmaster, I thought that was a great episode. Excuse me, I forgot the order of the podcast episodes. Swagmaster came out, and then the Skylink episode came out. But yeah, I mean, shout out to Swagmaster. I hope he does. I love his handle, and we had a great conversation about the Zelda timeline as well. He did a video where he basically rewrote the timeline. That's a great video. I really recommend checking out if you haven't checked it out, because that's something that like Hyrule Historia came out, what, almost 15 years ago now, and people haven't really doubted the timeline since, because it's like, all right, there's an official timeline, we're taking it. But then games have come out since. Since Hyrule Historia came out, we've gotten A Link Between Worlds, and okay, we can fit that on the Downfall timeline. But then we've also gotten Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. And we're kind of told, all right, they're at the end of the timelines, but how exactly does that work? And now we have flashbacks. Both Breath of the Wild has flashbacks, and Tears of the Kingdom has flashbacks. Where are those on the timeline? And there's new stuff that's up in the air. And that could rearrange the other games a little bit. I totally think that's fine. So I think it's okay to open the conversation on the timeline back up, and have that conversation again. Now, Hyrule Historia is based upon the developer decisions with the timeline. Like, Hyrule Historia is, like, to be clear, like, it's not pulled out of someone's butt. Like, that is showing the history of each game, how it was made, and the game that it was supposed to be a prequel or sequel to. Like Hyrule Historia's timeline is showing that progression, based on like developer interviews and like actual evidence about like each game and its relationship to the next one. So it's like it's not just random, right? But I think that there's still a conversation about interpretation. I think you can definitely open that back up. I love this comment. I want Ryan Gosling to play Link. Someone said Ryan Reynolds. I think those are funny choices, but yeah, Link is literally the player, and Ryan Gosling is literally me, so it makes sense. Like I'm okay with like. I guess I do want to say this as far as like fan casts go, because we did talk about Link in our fan cast, and there's so many actors that I think could do it. I'm not really that picky. Like, in a sense, it's like I know that like Ocarina of Time's Link was modeled after a young Leonardo DiCaprio, so I think like an actor who matches that kind of energy, I think is okay, right? I know people joke about Tom Holland. That's not a terrible cast. He's not my first pick, but I would be okay if the movie is Tom Holland as Link. I'm not picky about that. I'm more picky, I think, when it comes to like Zelda and Ganondorf, and we talked about that in the video. I don't know. I go back and forth on who I'm more picky about. Not that I have like a specific actor, but there's a specific way that I envision those characters, because those are characters with depth and story. And Link is someone who's more of an open book, so I don't really care who plays him as much, even though I do want them to be careful about it. I think in that video, I recommend the lead actor from Godzilla Minus One. I was really impressed with him. I think getting an Asian actor for Link would solve a lot of problems. But also, it's like I think they could go in a variety of ways. I think Swagmaster recommended Timothée Chalamet if you want to get an American actor, and I think that that's fine. I think he's a great actor as well. I loved him in The King. I thought that was a really great like Shakespearean movie. It's on Netflix. I really enjoyed that one. But yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of actors that I think could do it. I had a dream a couple weeks ago where, I can't remember the actor's name, but this was just like a nightmare that I had. And maybe I shouldn't bring this up just in case this actor, like he's not gonna watch the episode, but like, but like I'm like, should I say this aloud? This was just a random dream I had, and it was like a worst case scenario for the Zelda movie. But like in the movie, several things are important. Like the story was like Hyrule is this old fantasy world, and it's like the plot of Enchanted, right? Is that like Link and Zelda like are all in this fantasy world, but like Link falls through a portal and ends up in the real world, and he was played by the guy that plays the soldier in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Like the soldier that's in a wheelchair, the veteran. I forget that actor's name, but he was playing Link, and like he was like now in the big city wielding a sword and was like getting in fights with homeless people because he thought they were Stalfos. This was all in the dream, and I woke up like sweating. So I don't know. It's like like the ideas were more disconnected in the dream. I woke up and it was like I think that's what that was about, right? But it's like those were images that I saw in my head, and I woke up scared. I don't want that, and it's like it's tough, right? Because for the Zelda movie, what do I want? I want to do more videos on it, talking about what I want, just so that I can make sure my opinion is heard and make sure that there's an active discussion about that from the fans, because that's something that like. Not to say that's going to make a difference, but I do think, like, I know that from the games, like, Nintendo does pay attention to the fans. And even if it's not like they're going to make my changes specifically, I don't think that. But I do think that, like, by making more videos, that is a way to make my voice heard and participate in a larger discussion on YouTube where we can make our voices heard in a way that the studios might hear as a whole. Not that they might watch any one particular video, but they might watch one of the videos. And I think participating in a discussion where we say what we want for the Zelda movie is important. I think it being live action is great. I think the tone is something that I'm worried about. I don't want it to be like Lord of the Rings or like a family friendly Game of Thrones. I don't think Lord of the Rings is a terrible inspiration as a starting point, but that's not what I really want for it. Zelda is different. It has its own world, it has its own ideas, and I want it to be something that's congruous with the writing of the games, um, and everything that those games are about, right? Um, and I think it's tough, right? Because like in many ways, it's like these games are about the hero's journey, and we know Avi Arad is going to be producing the movie, um, and so we know that like I don't think superhero movies is like a terrible place to start, but I don't want it to be like a Marvel movie. I love those Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. I don't think that's a bad starting point, just because like as movies, those do such a good job about communicating the hero's journey and like telling a great meaningful story. Um, I don't know what the like equivalent of that would be in a fantasy setting, but I think that those movies would still be a great starting point. They're funny, they're lighthearted, like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, right? They're lighthearted, they're funny, but they're also serious and meaningful and deep, and like they move me each time I watch them. And I think they're great hero stories and would be a great reference point for a Zelda movie, filmmaking wise, genre wise, like aesthetically, maybe not, but tone wise, right? Aesthetically, like I don't care where it starts. And there's a lot of details I don't really care about. Like they could do the story and it's just about young Link. Link could be a child actor. I think a lot of our assumptions have been that like it's going to be like a story more like Breath of the Wild in some ways, or taking from its conventions. Maybe it's more retelling like Ocarina of Time, but like it's taking from like the modern conventions. Link is an adult, Zelda is an adult, right? Like it's just some of that, like Breath of the Wild meets Ocarina of Time, somewhere in between there. Um, and I don't know, like I think we're taking that for granted. I think it's possible that Child Link might be like the main character. That Link might be a kid, and I'm okay with that. Like I don't care like what direction they go in. But I just think that like there's possibilities for this movie. Like it could be more of like it could feel more like Peter Pan, right? This child hero facing a big threatening evil, and I think that that would be fine. I think that would still be congruous with the point of the games. Um, it's like that's not my first pick, but I think that that would be okay, right? Because I think it would be fun if it's something more along the lines of Peter Pan or Narnia, right? And that more like fairy tale aesthetic. I don't think that's a bad thing, especially if you're pulling from Ocarina of Time and some of its ideas, which I think is a really cool like fairy tale meets like some of the brutalities of the real world, and I think you could do that really well. But anyway, I think this video is getting long enough. I could keep talking about some of these comments. I feel like I've only scratched the surface. I've only gone a week, a week down, and there's so many comments. And I thank you all for leaving comments on the channel and for sharing your passion with me and your thoughts and sharing this love for the series. And I feel like I only scratched the surface of these comments. I try to, like read the comments as they come out and respond to them, and or like them as they come out when I agree with them. And I try to, be responsive and be a part of this community. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Without further ado, I'll let you go.